Welcome to The Life of Hair, and in today's episode we're going to look at a very easy balayage air touch highlighting technique that is so quick and simple to do. We've got a very light base to work off of, which obviously does make life a little bit easier when it comes to lift, but this does work really well on dark bases too. Now, we separated the hair into 4 quadrants, from the highest point of the head down to the back of the ear, and then split down the centre back. And we're using diagonal backward sections to increase the softness. We have taken a slice section here on the nape. We are about 1 centimetre off the actual nape line because the hairs there are very soft and weak and we do not want to break them off. So we've gone a little bit further into the hairline for that reason. Now, this is a full head technique and only takes around an hour. You can do a half head technique in maybe 40 minutes or so, and you can just break the technique down to do exactly which part of it you want to do. Now, the next section that we take is also a diagonal backward section. We're going to hit it with the hairdryer, which unfortunately, because of my camera angle, you can't see exactly how I've hit it with the hairdryer, but there is one clip in just a second that you'll be able to see how it's done. But you can see how thin this section is already. We then weave this section to make it even softer. We will alternate this pattern throughout the entire head shape. Now, this second section is so unbelievably diffused in the hair. And when I say air touch, it's not like the traditional air touch techniques that you see, that you're taking slightly bigger sections in terms of depth and you're blowing a lot of hair through. These are still finer sections, but we're just taking out some of those baby hairs to really amplify how soft and beautiful this technique actually turns out. So you can see there, just using a very simple foiling technique, securing the back, and that's exactly how I'd always foil all of my foils. So here's the point at which you can just see me using the hairdryer to blast through. I just go up and down the section 2 or 3 times. I'm not hugely worried about how much hair comes through, but some hair will separate from the section above, and you can see how fine this slice section is. Using upward strokes there to diffuse the colour as we travel up towards the root area. And we've worked diagonally into this triangular section at the top here. And we're just going to weave out this section. We're going to go chunky-ish, as you can see with this particular section, but you don't have to be too conservative with how fine you weave, because obviously you've blown some of the hair through, you've then weaved, and you've got a fairly fine section in the first place, which you'll see how this comes out right at the very end. So we work through both back sections just like that, and then move on to this front section. So we're going to take a diagonal backward section here, and just off of the hairline. As you can see, we're going to exclude those small baby hairs around the face, as they will cause us issues in terms of can be a bit spotty around the hairline if we're not careful. Blow the hair through the section and then weave the section, especially on this front hairline section. So we then go in with our normal foiling technique, and you can do your foils however you want to do them, but we're going to just brush back up towards the scalp area there to diffuse out any little hairs that we may want to soften even further in that regrowth area. Paint fairly close to the root, but not to the lip of the foil, using an upwards brush stroke to make sure you evenly distribute the product towards the scalp. This next section is exactly as we did on the back section. We take a fine section, we then hit it with the hairdryer. We're just blowing through some fine pieces of hair. We're not going kind of all in, trying to get loads of hair through the section, because we've got a fairly fine section in the first place. And you can see just there that some of the hairs come through, and how fine this section actually then becomes is completely, if you put a newspaper underneath that, you'd be able to read it through it. And that's a good way of thinking about how fine these sections need to be. So as we work our way through, sometimes we need to elevate our section, saturate the underneath, dependent on how much blonde is in each of the sections on the ends. This has got a piece of hair that hasn't got a huge amount of lightness towards the ends because of our previous technique. We work in that alternating weaving, slicing technique until we get to that top section. Now, unfortunately, my shoulder is the only thing that is in focus here, but I just wanted to keep this clip in here very deliberately so that you guys could see that I hit it with the hairdryer. I've then weaved this section right on this front hairline, and I've deliberately done this to create a very soft diffusion, which you will see in the final images at the end of this video, where I show you how soft and beautiful all the hairlines are on this particular technique. Now, in this top quadrant, this rectangular section that I've sectioned off through the parting, we are not taking any slice sections. So it is all take a section, blow the hair through, weave it. Now, by blowing the hair through on these sections, it does give a different result to backcombing. I've seen in comment sections previously where people say, oh, we'll just backcomb the sections. You can't get quite as close to the root area when you are doing it like that. Blowing the air through the sections does mean that you can come right up towards the root area, and that hair that falls through the section is really diffused and easy to manage and get out of the way, and you can still get your foils right towards the root area. We're going to stay in a diagonal section all the way through the partings. This gives extra softness. Anytime we use a diagonal through a rectangular or a horizontal section, we will add softness to the technique. So this is a great technique because, as you can see, there are some spaces in between these foils. Now, if you want an ultra blonde look, this may not be the ideal technique for you, but you can always add more foils in. This whole section through the side here, just want to give you a little look at how that was applied. And here is a close-up look at the diffusion from these sections through the top, through the sides, where you've just got absolutely seamless results from the highlights, quite close to the root, but you can hardly tell where it starts and stops. This is obviously closer to a balayage, lived-in blonde, whatever technique we're going to call it these days. They've got to become very, very crisscrossed and overlapped. And it just gives that beautiful transition from what is very, very blonde on the ends from previous highlights all the way through to the root area, where it's just so diffused, so soft, so beautiful. You can see their long side fringe coming through. Those first few foils that we put in don't really create a face frame, just create a beautiful overall look. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you again for another episode of Life Fair very, very soon.